I have a couple of things sent to me by an avid fan of the show, Refugee Facts. And this comes from a long, long list, but these are just a couple. Churches play an important role in helping contractors meet the matching requirements for federal grants. In kind donations from community partners count as matching funds. And it says some VOLAGs. I guess that's part of the people who are working on this program raise no cash at all. I think what that means is volunteer organizations, something along those lines. The State Department does not permit spreading the gospel, or as the State Department's website states, while some of the agencies have religious affiliations, they are not allowed to proselytize. As federal contractors, they are affected by new regulations coming from the White House to require religious groups receiving federal funds to provide abortions and contraception to female refugees whose vulnerability to rape is huge. Apparently, then the sentence ends at that point. But I wanted to share that with you today because some of your local churches who may be involved in this program saying, hey, we've got to care for people. Churches are not. They don't respect national boundaries, and nor should they. But they're involved in these programs because that's what they're commanded to do. But they're not commanded to assist in, paying for abortions and the like, or contraceptives and the like. And that's where, some of them I think ended up getting into trouble in all of this. But then I have a strange feeling that in many of these churches anymore, the people in charge are saying, do as I say, not as I do. 9:35, Bill Colley with you. It's 66 at our studios. Quickly, if I could share something about this, and I saw this over the weekend. This comes from the Middle East Forum, which Daniel Pipes, who helped put this together, helped found this organization, asked me to become a sort of a corresponding member a number of years ago with the organization. So I'm on all of the email lists. Why or when and why good Muslim neighbors turn bad? This comes out of the Middle East. Days ago, after ISIS entered the Syrian city of Hasakeh, prompting a mass exodus of Christians, a familiar but often overlooked scene took place. Many otherwise normal Muslims joined ranks with ISIS, instantly turning on their longtime Christian neighbors. There is no lack of examples of these types of Muslims. The following are testimonials from non-Muslims, mostly Christian refugees from those regions of Iraq and Syria, now under the Islamic State control. Consider what they say about their longtime Sunni neighbors who appear moderate, or at least appeared nonviolent, but who once the jihad came to town exposed their true colors. Do you remember the movie? There was a book, in fact, it was a movie based on a famous novel called Exodus. Paul Newman was in the movie, a lot of big stars. John Derek played an Arab neighbor and friend who was, when push comes to shove on the eve of Israeli independence, he's told, you're going to fight with us because you're one of us, and you're going to give us all the details on your Jewish neighbors, and you're going to help with torturing them and killing them, and he refuses, and his side ends up hanging him because he refuses to get involved. And this is what happens in a lot of these situations. Old neighbors who used to dine at each other's homes, the situation changes, and all of a sudden, it's no different though throughout history. There's a story in the local newspaper today about what happened in the Balkan states during the 1990s, or what happened in Poland when the Germans came marching in. A lot of Poles who'd lived next door to Jewish neighbors for many, many years and gotten along swimmingly with them ended up killing them or robbing them or turning them in. And it's happened throughout human history. But I think it tells you a great deal about the situation in the part of the world and what we're involving ourselves with by offering these refugees a home here. But again, we're not being, it doesn't appear that anybody is offering these Christians refuge here. They might actually fit in better because I don't know about you, but if you drive around Twin Falls, you see one mosque. You see how many churches? Well, maybe 100, maybe 200. Which group would be a better fit? Well, I think that we've answered that question. That's rhetorical, by the way, just in case you were wondering. Bill Colley with you this Monday morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. While the book and the movie Exodus were fiction, they were actually based on real events. And all they have simply done is a lot of those characters, their names were changed, but they are based on the actual people. Menachem Begin. Sal Minio's character in the movie is playing essentially Menachem Begin. And Paul Newman, I think, was Yitzhak Shamir. His character, though, had a different name in the movie. Ari Ben Canaan, I believe, was the name given to him in the movie. But it was based on actual facts, but was written as a work of fiction, just to give a little protection to some of the people who may have been involved in the birth of the Israeli independent state. It's 8:30 or 9:39. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLX. I promise I will get there. I mentioned it earlier. New warning out from some scientists that say, don't worry about global warming. In fact, you'll be begging for global warming in another 10 to 15 years. We'll tell you why coming up in just a few minutes. And it could be very, very cold by the time we're done. Hint, hint. 67, 20 minutes away from 10 o'clock. This is Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. That means you can listen to us online anywhere, all over the world. Came across a story over the weekend, and people say, well, again, can you trust climate scientists? But this one has an interesting twist. This comes from, in fact, it was actually in a legitimate, I say legitimate publication. From a science perspective, it certainly was. Science Daily. Solar activity predicted to fall 60% in 2030s to mini ice age levels. And then it goes into some detail. A new model of the sun's solar cycle is producing unprecedentedly accurate predictions of irregularities within the sun's 11-year heartbeat. Predictions from the model suggest solar activity will fall by 60% during the 2030s to conditions last seen during the mini ice age that began in 1645. Actually, I saw a TV show with Edward Herman. He's passed away now, but I saw a television show with him on the History Channel where they talked about this little ice age. Actually, it was cold for 500 years. From 1350 to 1850, and how it impacted, for instance, the reason North Americans, while you have Canadians and people in the United States guzzle more beer instead of wine, is because all of the vineyards in England and Northern Europe died during this cold period. So the people there in those cultures, Germany, England, and the like, the Nordic cultures, they all turned to brewing beer instead of making wine, and they settled most of North America. And then when you get to Mexico and then Central and South America, that was settled by people from Southern Europe who still had the vines. And so they may be more, if you go to Argentina, and the only wine I've ever liked was Malbec. If you go to Argentina, you can find that. I think it would be, what a wonderful vacation that would be to go to some small town out in the Pampas area of Argentina, sit down at a cafe and sip some of the local Malbec. But that's why we have these situations in the world today, these impacts that are still with us. And then over at the London Telegraph, Maunder Minimum, indicating how low sunspot activity was the name given to the period between 1645 and 715 when Europe and North America experienced very cold winters. In England, during this little ice age, the River Thames frost fairs were held. In the winter of 1683-84, the Thames froze over for 7 weeks, during which it was passable by foot, according to historical records. In fact, there are old paintings from that era showing people actually out ice skating on the Thames River. I took an art history course when I was in college, and our professor, who was mainly interested in the art part of it, did explain to us. He said, obviously, it was much colder in Europe because, he said, nobody has been skating on the Thames River now for many, many years, perhaps a couple of centuries. But it happened frequently back in the 1600s. So we've been warned and warned and warned that the earth is frying to a crisp, and if we would just, let the government come in and limit what our fuel supplies are and get rid of coal and oil and all of that nasty natural gas, we'd all be just so much better off and we could save the planet. Of course, we'd all be living in third world conditions, those of us who wouldn't starve. Speaking of which, Wall Street Journal, states are unplugging their renewable energy mandates. We have a couple of people from a couple of different states who wrote this piece. And in May, their writers say, Kansas effectively repealed its renewable portfolio standard, which required 20% renewable electricity by 2020, by making the target voluntary. This allows some free market forces to go to work, the chairman of the House Energy and Environmental Committee declared. North Carolina is on track to freeze its renewable energy efforts this year. The House has passed 2 bills that would hold the mandate at 6% renewables and prevent it from rising to 12.5% by 2021 as originally planned. There is powerful support in the state Senate for passing similar language before the end of the legislative session, likely in September. Because if these scientists are right that we're going to get a cold snap that could be reminiscent of the Little Ice Age, then all of those big pinwheels that are spinning around out there on the horizon, again, when you drive up the interstate toward Boise, you see these things just going round and round and round some days, or some days not. But if we get into really cold weather, those things are going to be malfunctioning, and you may not be able to keep a lot of them running. On the other hand, oil from the Dakotas, there's even oil beneath Colorado in the Rockies. It's in a waxy form, but if you get a little steam down there, it'll melt and it'll be able to be pumped out. In fact, what I'm told is below Colorado in the Rocky Mountains is the largest field of oil ever known. So the United States will be using coal, oil, and natural gas if we get stuck in a situation like this. You know it. All of you leftists know it out there. When your house is cold in winter, if we end up in something akin to the Little Ice Age, with massively frigid temperatures across this part of the world, you know it. You're going to be desperate to heat that home and keep your children warm. It's a funny thing about how liberalism is a luxury in this world. But when the chips are down, you can't afford it. And then all of a sudden, people are going to be clamoring to use more of that oil, natural gas, and coal, other than these, quote, renewable energies, which simply do not fill the void. 9:49. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX. You know what a conservative is? It's a cold liberal. We've got Mike Gallagher coming up in just a short while. That'll be brought to you exclusively by the financial advisors at Waddell & Reed in Twin Falls. The telephone number at that office is 736-6563. That is 736-6563. As Mike Gallagher mentioned, he's already been doing this, I think he said the other day, 4 months. It seems that Mike Huckabee hadn't been gone quite that long. But Mike Huckabee, of course, has moved on and become, once again, a presidential candidate in the Republican field. And as we mentioned a bit earlier in the program, that field just got even more crowded this morning as Scott Walker officially made his announcement that he indeed is a candidate. And a thank you to Mike Gallagher. We're wrapping up our program, this edition of it today. God willing, the creek don't rise. I get to do it all over again tomorrow, starting at 8 o'clock until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, right here on News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com. This is Top Story with Bill Colley. Before I wrap up today, happened to see a story at Idaho Press Tribune over the weekend. New poll shows surge in independent affiliation in Idaho. All of your candidates for president, maybe even a lot of candidates now on the state and local levels, have to be looking at some of these figures and wondering how they're going to court all of these new independent voters. More Idahoans, the writer says, her name is Kelsey Mosley, are independents, and they outnumber both parties in the state for the first time in many years, according to a new poll from Idaho Politics Weekly. The data showed 38% of Idahoans now identify as independent, compared to 32% who identify as Republican, and 16% as Democrats. Again, they could caucus in one of those old-fashioned phone booths. Among those independents, 38% say they wish the Republican Party was more moderate, while 24% feel it should be more conservative. Of course, now you get to the media's wishful thinking. Many independents might be voting Democrat by 2018, according to the individual, Dan Jones, from Dan Jones Associates in Utah. He did the polling. He said, which will present a challenge to the race for governor. The governor's office has been held by Republicans for the past 20 years. Does anybody actually believe that that's going to happen anytime soon in the state of Idaho? 9:56, Bill Colley with you. 67, you're on the air on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.
Yeah, Bill, quickly, this is kind of a unique thing. Last night in the thunderstorm, my 10-pound poodle ran off in fear, and our family was, you love your animals, and all night I would get up and hope he was standing outside by the door, and he wasn't. But this morning a friend texted me and said he had him, so we were able to find the dog. And you can imagine if a person who has lost a child and to never know what ever happened, whether or not they're alive, kidnapped, dead, and the uncertainty, and what a terrible, anguishing thing it was, because last night I thought, well, I'll never know what happened to him. And so I thought, well, he's just a dog, but still, you love them. And I said to him, I was laying in bed in the middle of the night thinking, as I watch my country slip away, and I say to myself, I've got to do everything I can do to save it. And I've got to somehow help my fellow man to give a you-know-what about saving their country, too, instead of being distracted by whatever the hell it is. And so it's just thoughts that you have, and you hope as you watch this thing occur that we can muster the gumption to save our country.
Thank you for the call. It's going to take a lot of courage on the part of people, and a lot of people are going to have to move out of their comfort zones. We're coming up on 9:58, and it's a challenge. It certainly is. If you read the list of what happened to those men who signed the Declaration of Independence, some of them paid with their lives, and they lost everything they had. Other people, I remember the fellow's name, I believe his name was Morris, and he helped fund the Revolutionary War. And yet when it was done and he ended up bankrupt and destitute, no one came to his aid. But on the other hand, he made a huge sacrifice. No greater love has a man than to give up his life for a friend. John 15:13. And sometimes to even give up your property and everything else you own. Quickly, before we wrap up the program, only about 25 seconds, Limbaugh coming up following news at 10 o'clock, but there's a story a friend sent my way. Cops arrest woman for battering female domestic partner with something called a dildo. Same-sex marriage is off to a flying start in America. News is next. Hey, thank you for joining me today here on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.